Hi there, now we have sound. Hi, my name is Robin Holliday, and I am the owner and curator of HorseSpirit Arts Gallery, located at historic Savage Mill in Savage, Maryland. It's delightful to be with you here tonight. You are here to hear April Rimpo talk about her current art show at the gallery. First of all, I hope you have your favorite beverage with you and you have your favorite snack. You can either sit back and watch or you can enjoy participating. So April, welcome.
Thank you, Robin. Hold on, I've got to mute something over here. Otherwise, we're going to hear you talking on top of me. All right, now we're fixed. There's always a technical problem.
Always. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Robin. I'm so delighted that we can have this artist talk. This is great.
You know, when you are put in situations where things don't work out, you improvise.
Yes.
So guys, April's going to be talking to you about her current art show called Telling Stories. So April, why don't you start us off and tell us about how your background influences your art?
Okay. So I've always been really inquisitive. Even, you know, when I was in my teens, I was always interested in learning about people around the world, how they lived. So I was always trying to learn that kind of thing. And fortunately, as an adult, I was in a position where I was able to do some traveling and see places. So that has definitely influenced my art significantly. Another thing is I always have a pretty strong emotional response to things. So, you know, I'm the kind of person that, you know, when I'm driving down the road, I'll see something that just excites me. I'll have to pull over, take pictures. You know, now with our smartphones, I always have a camera with me. And so, in my art, once I got to the point where I felt like technically I knew how to handle watercolor, putting my emotion in my paintings became really important to me. And then the last thing is in my day job before I retired, I had a lot of interaction with people, and my job really was to learn what their issues were and be able to understand what they were trying to do. And so I felt like that experience helped me to see the world through other people's eyes, and which kind of went along with the always being interested in learning about places around the world. So it kind of all fed on itself, and all of that is coming out in my art now.
You know, April, I don't think our viewers realize just how how important that is in your art, because you're an electrical engineer, so you're highly technical, and you're an introvert. And so we've been together 5 years, and it took me a while to just realize how much your emotion is right there and is, you know, it just pours out into your art.
Yeah, it's kind of raw at times.
Well, it makes for excellent art, and you are just wonderful. Guys, I wanted to let you know who's joined, or April, you have fans. We have Chris Gurcio, Elaine Weiner Reed, May Beal, Liz Hensley, Trudy Babchek, Greta Rimpo, and Aga Kunsa. Guys, thanks so much for coming. All right, April, over to you.
That's great. All right. So I thought, you know, that we needed to do a little tour of my art. While I do that, actually, I want to shift the picture just a smidge, I think. There, I think we can see all the way. No, we can't.
We can, April. We can see everything.
You can, we can see the clouds and everything.
You're doing great.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let me talk about themes. Kind of a new theme in my work in this exhibit is I have 4 paintings here that are really about man-made things that are kind of going back to nature. And then during the interview, we talked about By the Old Mill and All Tied Up. But the other 2, this one is called Nature's paintbrush, and this one is called Looking Back. And I thought I'd give a little bit of background on these pieces. So this one, with the bucket with all the nails and screws and car parts, I found that at the kind of just inside the edge of the woods. And I was drawn to all the beautiful colors of the rust. But I was just totally intrigued by why was it even there? You know, why had it been left in this place for such a long time that this transformation had happened? You know, the weather and Mother Nature had truly taken their brush to this old pail. And so that maybe that's part of my inquisitiveness, but also just the wondering about what was the circumstance that it kind of got left behind there. And then this other one, Looking Back, so I take pictures, as I mentioned earlier, all the time. And I actually took the reference photo for this painting about 40 years ago. That's 40. And I've gone back and re-looked at that photo. Actually, there's a series of photos many times, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so finally I did. And so, you know, I was just fascinated by the old equipment from the pioneer days. It was mostly farm equipment, very rough terrain, very difficult, you know, place to live, I think. And so I was kind of drawn to it from that perspective. But here's a wonderful thing. A friend of mine who grew up in the West on a very large farm, when she saw this painting, she said to me, "That reminds me just of my dad's old equipment graveyard." And apparently, when he got new equipment, he would take the old equipment to this one area on his property, and he'd put it there. And over time, you know, it would degrade. And so that was so wonderful for me. So, you know, I'm always want to hear the story other people see in my art, because that enriches it so much. And I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a city of about 100,000 people. And although my dad had grown up on a farm, he really didn't talk about it. The paintings kind of have stories of their own. Yeah.
Sweet April, we can't see you. We can see all of your art, but you are completely off screen. Can you?
Well, I was trying to step back so you could see that painting.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to come even further because we all would like to see you. Hi, April.
Hi. All right. So another theme in my art. So I'll go this approach.
Perfect. Bicycles.
I've done bicycles forever.
Yeah.
I know I have done at least a dozen bicycle paintings. I love their geometric shape, but what I think I love more is kind of the organic shape of people on these geometric shapes. So that's kind of what draws me to that. But then in both of these paintings, which are fluid acrylic on canvas, it's kind of the relationship between them, the way that they're apart. Well, in fact, this one is called Apart Yet Together. And so the shadows are bringing them together. And down here, you know, is the relationships of the bike riders and the person in the lead. And so the relationships were kind of the key to what I was trying to communicate in that. Now, a third, yeah.
I just find it so interesting how drawn you are to bicycles, yet you don't bike.
Yeah. I have periodically in my life when I lived in Arizona and it was extremely flat. That was when I biked. But here with rolling hills, I don't bike.
Okay.
Yeah. A third theme is the nature paintings. So we talked about the clouds at the interview. I've got birds. We also spoke about the flower painting here of the wisteria, which is called Graceful Embrace. And there's a painting on the other wall that I'll get to in a minute that is the one of the swans. It's called Family Cruise. So before I pick up my iPad and travel us over there to the other part of the exhibit, are there any questions that I should field while I'm here on this wall?
Yeah, so you have a couple of people who have asked you questions. First of all, Norma Brandon has added in. Hello, Norma.
Hi, Norma.
So Elaine Weiner Reed, she wants to know, what are your two favorite themes or series in your work at this time? As artists, we have selected several favorites and some go back even further.
Yeah, so the new ones for this show were these old, things returning to Mother Nature. But things that I go back to a lot are people and places and human interaction. And so there is one figure painting on the other wall that I'm going to talk about, and I'll explain a little more about what I mean when I'm interested in portraying how people live and what they do. And that's a theme that I go back to all the time. Probably my most common, and the city scenes and landscapes actually fits into that category, surprisingly.
Hey, April, before you leave this wall, those two paintings in the center, I had asked you if you would paint something locally. And can you tell people where they are?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so by the old mill is right behind historic Savage Mill. And I had no idea when I first saw this what the building was. When I got home with pictures, my husband looked it up and he said, "Oh, that was the old power plant for the mill." So who knew? And it's over the river, and clearly the river was part of the cooling system. Once I explored, I've been back and explored it more since then. And then the one right here to the right is also at Historic Savage Mill. And I was actually leaving the gallery one evening after one of the events there. And as I was heading back to my car, I thought the building just looked so gorgeous, all lit up. And so I took a picture. And then again, there's always a little delay before I do a painting, but I decided, because there were always a lot of women's night out and other events going on at Savage Mill, I wanted to have this to be, I set it to be one of those times where there's a lot of people going in and others coming out.
It's a really beautiful painting.
Thank you. Ready for me to move to the other wall?
Well, I just wanted to tell you, Chris Gercio wanted to take a closer look at a painting, but she didn't say which painting, so I don't know. And Trudy Babchak asked you to talk about your dark painting, which you just did.
Just did, yeah. So
she wants
I need to unplug it.
Wait, where are you going?
Where am I going?
Yes.
I'm flipping over here so I can zoom in on anything.
Perfect.
Should we need to?
Chris Gercio would like to see a closer look at Rusty Bucket.
Ah, all right. There you go.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yep, that's the one I call Nature's Paintbrush, because I think nature did a really wonderful job with it.
Yeah.
A lot of times
you did a wonderful job capturing it, April.
Well, thank you. A lot of times I will change the colors from my photos to portray the emotion I want. But on paintings like this, it's important to me to portray the reality, because reality is just incredible. Look at all those colors.
Yeah.
So in this case, I was replicating the colors as closely as I could.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
April, before you go, you've had a request to see the farm equipment close up.
Oh, sure. All right, now let me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Get to a point where it's not some glare on it. There we go.
That's good. That's beautiful, April. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks. All right, so we go over to the other wall.
Let's do it.
All right. All right. Oh, so I did mention, I'll just sit down here for a second. This was the family cruise, which was the last one in the category of just the beauty of nature. Now, the next theme I wanted to talk about was the one that's really about people and how they live. And so this one here is actually in that category because, you know, to me, it's a tribute to musicians. And the circumstance when I saw it, there was a woman being interviewed. These were all her pieces. She had her fiddle out, which she was while she was being interviewed, and occasionally she would play it. But all the banjo and the guitar were also hers. So, you know, so that context was people who professionally do music, but it also reminded me a lot of my own endeavors into music with my brother and with friends and my husband as I got older. And so, you know, there's a lot of hobby people who also do a lot with music. And so to me, that just tells a lot about, you know, people and the things they love to do.
Yeah.
The other one, obviously, in this category is this portrait, which is called Flower Vendor. And this one, so this is one where I took the photo, I believe about 10 years ago. And it was another one that I had to think about a long time to decide how I wanted to do it. And what drew me to it was her. Because, I mean, look at how intensely she is, you know, she's in the process of wrapping the flowers, getting them ready for a customer. And she's like, wants them to be so perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so that was what drew me to doing this painting. So here's the funny part. Recently, a friend of mine was doing a demo for a group, and I went to the demo, and here he is painting this, I swore, this same woman. So after he was done, I went up to him and I said, "Where did you see this woman?" And he said, "In Seattle." And I said, "Oh my God." Now, this was a current photo of her, so she was 10 years older, but still recognizable. And it was like, oh my God, all artists obviously love her. It was a little bit different setting. I mean, she had flowers in front of her. She wasn't currently wrapping any, but it was just so interesting to me that he too had been drawn to just showing this woman and how, you know, involved she was with her business and her flowers.
April, before you leave that painting, a couple things. First of all, what you said is it looks like those flowers are her art.
Yes.
You know, with such care, and you captured her art. We do have a question, and someone would like to know what those drips are at the bottom of your painting.
So I put drips whenever I think it's appropriate. And the reason I do drips is when I work in watercolor, I kind of want people to know that. And I think drips are really beautiful. So I intentionally leave some drips as I'm, you know, creating the piece. Usually, I was going to say usually city scenes don't have drips, but actually the next two right to the right here actually both have drips as well. And now I'm actually doing that maybe more. So, you know, this piece is framed and presented traditionally for a watercolor, right? With a matte frame and glass, which thankfully is not reflecting on us today. But these other two, let me step back a little bit.
Those are beautiful.
These are framed without glass. So I varnished them and framed them without glass. And so now, you know, when people look at my work, they get a little confused. It's like, well, what are you working in? Because there's no mat, there's no glass. And they're quite confused by that. So so the drips kind of help remind people that yes, it really is watercolor.
Well, those are
Um,
beautiful paintings. April, while you're on this, can you talk about the difference between fluid acrylic and watercolor?
yeah. So it's really, so all paint is the same pigments. So the pigments are the raw materials that go into creating the colors. And then it's the carrier, the liquid that they're placed in that decides whether they're an oil paint, a watercolor paint, or an acrylic paint. And the acrylics that I use are actually come in little bottles, which is why they're called fluid acrylics. So they're liquid in form, and then I, water them down just like I do with watercolor, um, and paint in very much the same way. So this scene here of Chinatown is actually a fluid acrylic. And it looks just like watercolor. And to be honest with you, I have to, if I don't write it down at the time that I do the painting, I often can't tell whether I'm looking at a watercolor painting or a fluid acrylic painting. Now, this one, I used the acrylics much more boldly. So, this one here is also acrylic. But I was using them boldly because I wanted that really bright, vibrant scene. And actually, these two paintings were the ones I was going to talk about next, because this is still part of the how do people live concept. So, this was what do people do, and this is how do people live, right? So the city scene, it's congested with cars. There's a big, huge car lineup. There's people walking crossing the street. If you look into the details of the painting, it's kind of hectic, right? It's a lot of hustle bustle in the city. Now, obviously, the star of the painting was the Chinatown Gateway because it's just so gorgeous. But I'm capturing the environment that it lives in, whereas this place was very, very peaceful. I happened to see this in Norway, and we actually were going. So it was on a fjord, and we were passing it on a ferry boat, and we didn't actually see anyone there. Now they clearly, were lived-in homes, but it was just so peaceful. I added a few people just because I wanted to have a few people. But although you can see a road that's right in front of these couple of houses here, you couldn't see that it went anywhere. It was sort of like this little short road within town. It was a very, very steep mountain. And I'm pretty sure the only way on and off of this little village was by boat. I think that was their only
Wow.
option. So in this one, I just wanted to just show that the beauty of that scene, and there's just the opposite, right? The super quiet, self-sustaining life. So that's what I mean when I say, these are all about people. They may not be, the people are not the stars in these last two, but it's, it's how people live.
Well, April, you've had a couple more people join. We have Ann Zolkover, and I apologize if I've messed up your name, and your son, Jeremy. Jeremy says, looking good. And Cindy DeCasanera. Cindy, I'm so sorry, but she says, how many sits does it usually take you to complete a painting?
So I would say probably 5 to 10 painting sessions, which can range, from 2 to 3 hours a piece, I would say. And that's once I've figured out what I'm going to do. So, I've given you 2 examples where, one took 40 years to figure it out. And then the woman with the flowers, took me a good chunk of 10 years to figure out what I wanted to do with her. So I will have photographs that I know I want to paint, and it may be years before I come up with a design. And then even after I have the design, I have to kind of have the right emotional content at the time for me to do that painting. So, I may design it and it still may be months before I actually paint it, which is why I tend to paint one thing at a time, because of the emotional content part. And then once I actually sit down to do it, I do it.
Yeah.
So it's relatively fast, but still a fair number of hours.
Well, April, one last topic I want to make sure that we talk about is your framing and gallery wrap and the type of boards that you use, because even though they're water and color and fluid acrylic and they're close to each other, they appear in all sorts of different forms. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I'm putting this back down so I can do that. Yeah, so for a long time I mostly worked on watercolor paper, and it's still my primary thing I work on, both for the fluid acrylic and for the watercolor. And this exhibit, so this is watercolor paper I use for the watercolor people in the audience. They always want to know I use 140-pound cold press Arches paper, and that means something to them.
Okay. I'm pressing the I believe button.
Okay. In this exhibit, I have several things that are done on aquaboard, and aquaboard actually comes in a variety of sizes. And in this case, it has a 3/4 inch cradle. They also can come with like an 1.5 inch cradle. And, and this one has no cradle at all. And it's a clay surface that has been treated so that it watercolors and anything aqueous works well on it. But it's very different to work on than watercolor paper. It's more slick. So another surface that I seldom use, I have on rare occasion, is called UPO, and this is actually a sheet of plastic. And there are some watercolorists who do the most amazing things with UPO. It's too slick for me. I can do abstracts on it, but I can't do realism, whereas I know others who can. And this is sort of a cross between the slickness of the UPO paper and watercolor paper. So I work on it differently. Just kind of briefly. So on watercolor paper, you always work from the white of your paper and then light shades up to dark, because watercolor is transparent, and you can't put a light color on top of a dark color and expect it to go light. With aquaboard, you can put masses of dark down, and because it has a natural resistivity, you can then lift the dark paint off to get lighter shades. So it's quite a different way to work.
April, can you talk about what's gallery wrap?
Yeah, so the painting of the instruments and the one of the black swans, those were gallery wrapped. And rather than take those off the wall, I'll just bring this one out. So this is watercolor paper. So I work on watercolor paper. I work on it flat. I paint enough extra so that it will wrap around the edge. Now this one happens to be a narrow. So if you look at the back, these are stretcher bars, just like canvases are on, and they come in different depths. And most of the ones that I use are 1.5 inches deep. And so they stand up off the wall about 1.75 inches because I mount so I do the painting flat. I mount that onto a hard surface so that the painting itself is on, this surface is on top of a hard board so it can't be punctured. And then I wet the edges and I wrap it around, and I use staples just like with a canvas to stretch it around the stretcher bars. And then I varnish it. Actually, there's some varnishing before I wrap it, and then there's more varnishing after I wrap it. So all the paintings that don't have glass, I have used acrylic varnish on them. And there's only a couple paintings in this exhibit that are fluid acrylic. Most of them are watercolor. And this one actually is on watercolor canvas, which was kind of, I wanted to see what that surface was like. I think I did a small one first and kind of liked it. And it was closer to working on watercolor paper, but still not the same. And on this one, I found I had to use the paint nearly out of the tube with just a small amount of water added. So it was almost like working with oil, because I did oil years ago.
Nice. April, a bunch of people have joined, so I'm just going to welcome them. Hey, Susan Mason, I wave at you. Trish Paff, P-F-A-F-F. I'm so sorry about people's last names.
Hi, Trish.
Oh, good. Thank you. Regina Allen, Virginia Pierce Sellner, Linda Schischler, and Susan Bontz. And then she says, my mother-in-law, exclamation point. Is that your family?
My mother-in-law.
Oh, that's Donna Grant's family. She's our gallery manager. Hey, April, I know you've shown this painting before, but it's my very favorite painting of your show. Can you get up close and show people the mill?
Oh, yeah. All right, let's get this.
Because people really like the flower vendor, and I just wanted to show how detailed this painting is and how just beautiful the colors are. Will you zoom in a little bit more?
I will. So one thing I did want to say about this painting is this is one where, okay, so, so down here was kind of like all of the technical challenge, right? This was an old roof on a side building that had collapsed, and it was a metal roof. And so getting, all the rust was, one of my many challenges with this painting. The power building itself was brick. And then, of course, there were vines growing all over the place. But it was the background that was what really excited me. And so this was another, I took the photo and was trying to figure it out for years. And I took a workshop with a guy who is internationally known, does these incredible city scenes, but also a lot of scenes that have outdoor things in them. And I brought that photo to the workshop, and he said, you don't want to try to do this in this workshop. And I said, well, I would like some advice on it. And he said, because it was all of this tree mass back here that I was most worried about. I knew I would be able to figure out the building and those things. And he said, all I can tell you is that if you are not incredibly patient, you will hate this painting. And, just doing that background probably took me a week, because I would work one little segment at a time. But yet I needed to kind of blend the colors out so that it didn't look piecemeal. And I really wanted there to be a glow around where the fisherman is to help pull the eye to him, for one thing. And so so this is an area where I actually did a lot of variation on what reality was in the wooded area in order to kind of create a quiet emotion, a quiet and calm place, and not just, some gray woods off in the distance. And so there was a huge amount of work done on that. And in fact, let me see if I can. get this here real quick. Before I started this painting, I did
Oh,
color
wow.
charts. And so I had some paints in mind that I thought I could maybe use in order to get some of the colors I wanted. And so this was all testing, well, if I put this color down first and this one on top, what happens? And if I do it in the opposite order, what happens? And, if I put these three colors together, what happens? And so that was all in preparation for doing this painting.
Wow. Well, like I said, that's my favorite painting. It's right behind the gallery, and there's a beautiful trail there. People around here do fish in that river, and I can't say enough about it. It's far more beautiful in person.
Yeah,
Well,
that's definitely my favorite.
You made me laugh.
We're not supposed
Well, I
to
want
say
to tell
those
you
things,
some more
but it
people.
is.
Some more people joined, so I'd like to welcome. Oh my goodness, I'm going to say this name so incorrectly. Kuriakose. Kurkoseka. Serena King, Charlie Evans, Lisa Fisher Elliott, Maddie Hamilton, and Greta Rimpo. I bet she might be related.
Yeah, my daughter-in-law.
Aw.
Oops,
Well,
I just rotated my picture. Hopefully, okay, let's go back this way. Get me going this way again.
Well, for everyone, do you have any more questions before we let April go about her evening? Well, April, I will just say it's really been delightful to be with you. You are a great artist. We've been together 5 years, and the more I've gotten to know you, the more I realize what a very kind soul you are. So
thank you.
And I wanted to let everybody know that April's bringing her paintings to the gallery on Sunday. And even though we're closed, I'm going to hang all April's paintings up because as we watch what's going on with the virus, we are hoping that the trend in the data will improve and that the gallery will be able to open for private appointments. And I will have all of April's work in the gallery on the wall. So that'll be something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, April, thank you so much. We will see you again. And I can't say enough good things about you. Take care, my dear.
Thanks. Bye, Robin.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. Take care.